Hi, this is my review of the Insurgent film based on the book by Veronica Roth. It came out a couple of days ago. I got to see an advanced screening, which surprisingly was 3D. I didn't really think about that beforehand, so I wore glasses, which meant I had to do the whole double glasses thing. If I have a choice, I usually go for 2D, but for this film, the 3D bit worked very well. So I've read Insurgent a couple of times. I actually haven't read the third book in the series yet, so just take that into account when watching this review. I don't actually know what happens at the end. I am currently rereading Insurgent after I've seen the film to sort of put everything into context. I'm about halfway through now. And obviously because I'm going to be talking about the film, there will be some spoilers in this video. So as a book, I've never been completely crazy about Insurgent. I've always loved Divergent a lot more. I always feel like this book is a bit long for the story that's in it and it's a bit chaotic, but as a reading experience sort of on its own, I do really enjoy it and I really like all the characters and the setting. My initial response to the film is that I quite enjoyed watching it, especially because I hadn't read the book in a while, so I couldn't remember the plot too clearly, but as I was watching it, all these little memories came back to me. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I liked Divergent, so I wasn't really disappointed. I had an enjoyable movie watching experience. Okay, so let's just talk about some of the things I liked and some of the things I didn't like. One of the weird things that I sort of noticed immediately was the absence of the songs. The first film had all these montages with these amazing songs, mostly Ellie Goulding. And when I listen to the Divergent soundtrack, which I do quite a lot, I can just picture all the different scenes, and I really think Insurgent needed a couple of extra songs to keep it a bit more enjoyable and make it more cohesive. In the first film, we already get to see a lot of the different factions, but in this film, they sort of go from faction to faction and you get a closer look at everything. This may be a bit superficial, but I really enjoy seeing all the different clothing options. And when you see Canada for the first time, you're like, this is where the fashionable people live. I also liked how they did the projected announcements through the city and the camera was sort of floating from building to building. It really gave you an idea of how small this community actually is in this giant city. One thing that you notice immediately is that Triss in the film is a lot more violent straight away, and in the book, especially for the first part, is a huge deal how she's too scared to pick up a gun. I think it really sort of took away from her character and her development and her story by not having her be really scared of holding a gun and of fighting. Also, now that I'm rereading the book, I've definitely noticed that Triss and Four fight a whole lot more in the book than they do in the film. There's a lot of friction between them, and there's a bit in the film, but in the book it is a lot more. And I think in the book that really contributes to Triss feeling really isolated and making dumb decisions. I've definitely accepted Theo as Four. I wasn't a huge fan in the first film, but now when I read the book, it's sort of taken over the character of Four. Miles as Peter continues to be fantastic and to provide all the comic relief you need. Ansel as Caleb, I also really like. Also, I just want to point out Ansel's ridiculous running. I really miss the dauntless banter when they're at Candor and they're sort of like sleeping over in bunk beds. I find the humor in those little moments, while the whole situation is obviously terrible. One thing that I totally forgot about while I was watching the film were the things that they get shot with that don't affect Triss because she's Divergent, and then also the suicides that happen because of the sort of darts they were hit with. The sort of transmitter fluid, I can't remember what it's called, makes a lot more sense in the book because they can sort of just pull out the pin and the fluid is still in their bodies, but I think sort of trying to visualize that having one of those things that you can't take out because it will kill you works a lot better in the film. The scanners though that the erudite used is ridiculous because the whole thing is that is supposed to be such a mystery that they can't figure out. Now they just show up with these handy dandy scanners. Where did those come from? When it comes to the plot progression in the book, they constantly keep going back and forth from faction to faction. I think at some point they return to Amity. I'm just like, really? Why? Why do you keep going back and forth? And I think so in the film, I think it really makes sense to make it a bit more straightforward. I know a lot of people really disliked the sort of testing box with the message, but I think it was good to sort of visualize what they were looking for. It helps with making Janine look really evil. The technical side of the wires was a bit strange, and some of the actual simulations she has to go through are a bit strange, especially all the little like shattering pieces. Four even falls apart in little flakes like Voldemort did in the last Harry Potter film. I do enjoy a bit of, are we still in a simulation or are we out of it? There were also some characters that I felt were kind of missing. Tori had quite a big part in the first film and she has a bigger part in the second book, but she just sort of almost vanished, and the same goes for Marcus. The ending was quite interesting. Like I said, I haven't read Allegiant yet, so I don't know how this connects. In general, I think a lot of people might have been expecting something very similar to Divergent, but there's such inherently different stories. Very much a middle book and a middle film. I loved seeing the characters again. I loved seeing more of the world. So I'm just gonna wait patiently, finish rereading Insurgent, and then go on to Allegiant. I'm really curious to hear what you guys thought of the film. You can let me know in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Talk to you guys later. Doei!